Around 2 a.m., June 2013, in Franklin County, Ohio, this encounter happened. I was 11 and I was staying up all night playing video games when I heard something outside in the bushes. I was paranoid and the blinds were wide open, so I looked outside and saw reddish, orange eyes. I could also barely make out a face with a snout. I fell back in fear and heard a howl outside and then footsteps getting further away when I got back up. 2 minutes later, it was gone. This next encounter happened in Fairfield County, Ohio. 3 a.m., May 19th, 2004. One night I was out in the woods hunting around 1 a.m., and I found this weirdly mangled deer carcass near a tree. About an hour and 50 minutes later, I was walking back to my truck when I saw that it was violently shaking. So I readied my rifle. I then saw that it was like a bear-looking creature shaking my truck. It stood on its hind legs and growled at me before running off into the woods. When I got a better look at the creature, it had long arms, and claws were around 3 inches long. It had pointed ears like a German shepherd, muscular shoulders and legs, and a wolf-like snout with a short nub of a tail. The third encounter happened in Clinton County, Ohio, at around 9 p.m., July 21st, 2016. I was driving my girlfriend home from work. Both of us lived in a suburb in our small town, so the drive from her workplace is relatively short. The only off thing about our encounter was the fact that we saw it in the suburb, as opposed to a wooded or rural area like the other encounters. The moon was full, so we had a lot of light to see, but there were many mature trees in the yards of the homes surrounding the road we were driving on. All we saw was a large black blur moving very fast, almost as fast as a greyhound at full speed. The length of the blur made me estimate it was 6 to 7 feet. Both of us were shaken by the experience and headed home immediately. When we got home, my girlfriend and I recanted our experience with her family, who laughed at us for telling them that we had seen such a thing. They brushed it off as a tall tale and went on with their nightly activities. My girlfriend's 2 younger siblings were planning on playing a game called Manhunt. It's pretty much a souped-up version of hide and seek. When the 2 of them headed out, not even 2 minutes later they were walking back through the door. They both bolted in, clearly upset and shaken. They both said they saw the exact same thing my girlfriend and I had seen, but when they saw it, it was walking on its hind legs under a street lamp. Because of that, they got a clear view of it. They said it was dog-like and it was walking on hind legs on the street. After hearing that, we all as a group went out as witnesses to search for this beast and to warn the other kids that were playing Manhunt. My girlfriend's siblings have stopped playing Manhunt after their experience, and now that we have a name for what we saw, we are all more shaken and wondering if it will be back. Encounter 4 happened in Athens County. My girlfriend and I were driving down a remote county road in the early summertime, late one evening. She was the one driving, and I was in the passenger seat. The sun was setting behind us. We had just come around a curve when 2 does jumped out into the road in front of us. They acted like we weren't even there. They seemed to be focused on something else. So she jammed on the brakes and brought the car to a stop. I told her, "Man, that was close." That's when I looked up in the rear view mirror to see if there were any more deer coming. When I did that, in the red glow of the car's taillights, I saw something take a big step into the road. From the brush that was on the side of the road, whatever it was landed on its right leg. When it did that, looking at the rear view mirror, I could see it was mid-high to its stomach. In one motion, it then took another step forward and put what looked to be a hand down on the trunk of the car to apparently balance itself. When I saw that, I turned to look at my girlfriend. She was wide-eyed, her mouth was wide open, and she was as white as a ghost. I could also see that her eyes were tearing up, so I looked back, but by the time I did, it was already across the road. In an attempt to get a better look at the thing, I opened my door and got out of the car. When I looked, I could see that it was going down the embankment that was on the other side of the road. Because of the brush, I could only see from the armpits up. It was at least 7 feet tall with very wide shoulders. Its shoulders were at least 1.5 times as wide as my shoulders. And I've got wide shoulders for a guy. From the last bit of daylight left, I could see that it was black or dark brown color. It had pointed ears on its top of its head like a dog. Its ears weren't overly wide or fuzzy. Its head was kind of dome-shaped, more or less, with flat sides. It acted like we weren't even there and seemed to remain focused on the deer. I was thinking, what in the world is that thing? It looked like some kind of werewolf or wolfman to me. It was way too big to be a person. Through that whole ordeal, I never get a chance to see its face. In the area where we saw the thing, people have reported being paced in their vehicles going down the road by creatures that look exactly like what we saw. Encounter 5 happened in Scioto County. 1:30, March 10th, 2005. Okay, this took a lot of courage because I've been ridiculed so much for what happened to me. My grandfather owned a cabin. I'm not going to disclose the location of it due to the fact that I don't want anything to happen to anyone. Anyway, my grandfather's cabin was his way of getting the family together for the holidays so he could have a nice Sunday dinner with us all. One day, all of a sudden, that all stopped abruptly. He wouldn't allow anyone but himself to visit the cabin. We all looked forward to going to and cherished for years. I would ask him why he was doing that. He never told me why, but when he passed, he left the place to me. I inherited the cabin of my childhood and was ecstatic about it. It was soon after that I realized why he did what he had done. I would go out and walk the woods on the game trails, which are everywhere. I know these woods like I know my own home, so I never had a reason to fear them. It was on one of these walks that I encountered what I call the Dogman. I was walking just like any other time, nothing was different. It was then, on one of the game trails, I noticed an offshoot, a small trail that went only 6 to 7 feet back. I could see that something had bedded down there. I thought it was a deer. I then walked in the bedded area. I soon realized that this was an ambush point for whatever made this bedded area, and it was massive. My arm hairs stood erect and chilled literally ran down my spine. I felt as if I was being watched from a different vantage point. Since it was nighttime, I had a tracking flashlight on my sidearm, the latter of which I drew and kept at my ready. I genuinely feared for my life at this point. All of a sudden, an ungodly growl was made to my right about 10 to 15 yards from me, very close indeed. I pissed myself. It was so terrifying. I didn't immediately run, fearing that whatever it was might take me as a threatening. I turned and started heading back to the main trail, and when I was about 5 minutes from the back door of my cabin, this thing let out a howl that I swear felt like it went right through my body. I then proceeded to run. As soon as I did, this thing was chasing me. For every 5 steps I took, this thing was taking 1. That's how fast this Dogman was. I heard the sounds of branches being ripped off trees and could have sworn I felt the vibrations of it running after me. I barely made it into the cabin and slammed the door, locking the 2 deadbolts in a chain lock. I then turned on my spotlight and shined it into the tree line. There were 3 sets of eyes in the tree line that shined a vivid yellow with enormous black pupils. I felt as if this thing could read my mind, but I'm not sure it could. All I know is that I'm alive, and I've since heard them many times, but I don't take night hikes anymore, and I haven't for years. The 6th encounter happened in Trumbull County, 6 p.m., December 26th, 2016. I saw something Monday night that still has me totally shaken to my very core. I've always loved nature. I love the woods. I love hiking and camping and fishing. I'm really into mycology, so I'm out looking for mushrooms and various types of fungus whenever I get a chance. The weather was absolutely beautiful on Monday for this time of year, so towards evening time I decide to round up some of my walleye gear and head down to the old train trestle crossing a Mahoning River in Niles, Ohio. I had parked my car about 1.5 miles from the trestle so I could walk the tracks and hit a few other spots along the river on my way down. By the time I reached the trestle, it was pretty much dark. I was wearing a headlamp at the time, so I had depending a light source. At this location, there is a lake directly across the river, which the two are connected by a small overhead dam. I was there for 15 minutes when, all of a sudden, this overwhelming feeling of dread came over me. I switched my headlamp on to turn around and start back up the riverbank. And right behind a big sycamore tree, I saw what looked to be a very large animal, kind of kneeling beside and behind it. As I locked my eyes on it, I was completely froze. I knew I was definitely seeing something there, but my mind couldn't process it. What I was looking at didn't make any fucking sense. The thing that I keep saying myself, animals aren't supposed to look like that. Right as I was thinking this, it's as if the thing read my mind, stood up and made itself perfectly visible in the most pretentious way. It almost had a vibe like, yeah, now you see me, you know I'm real, I definitely exist. What are you going to do about it? And as soon as it happened, it kind of hunched over and made its way into the brush. I was out of there like a flash. As soon as my feet hit the tracks, I ran and ran the entire way back to my car without stopping. By the time I reached my car, I couldn't breathe. Both my legs were locked up. I was vomiting, and somewhere in between the encounter and running away, I had pissed myself. It's early Friday morning now, and I think I've only slept for about 6 to 7 hours altogether. I've been constantly searching YouTube for all kinds of stuff, listening to eyewitness accounts, and it sounds like these things I've encountered are quite often. I've heard of the Dogman before, but never really took it serious before that night in this encounter. I'd always picture a Dogman to look a little skittish, coyote-looking creature. Man, I love the woods and I love nature. The woods for me was always a safe haven. I could venture into it and escape stress of work, bills, relationship problems. I could always take a nice long hike, go fishing or foraging, and come home feeling 75% better. Now I feel like I was threatened and kicked out of my second home. The only thing I can keep thinking to myself is, these things aren't supposed to exist. I feel like a terrified little kid who just came face to face with the dreaded monster in the closet. You know, the monster your parents told you and assured you never existed and could never hurt you. People need to be made aware of these things. They are real as it gets, and they are dangerous. Thinking back to what this thing looked like and how it was built, these things are perfectly adapted killing machines. The way the arms and legs looked, it looked like it was perfectly adapted to walk on all fours as well as two. It was so quiet and fluent with its movements also. It's not like in the movies where the monster comes charging out of the woods growling and snarling. These things are masters of camouflage, and they utilize the darkness perfectly. I didn't notice a smell from it, probably because the wind was at my back at the time. But it sure smelled me. Its nose was up in the air the whole time of our encounter, just sniffing away. This experience has torn a huge hole in me. Every time I eat, I get nauseous. I can't sleep for more than 20 minutes at a time. And every time I close my eyes, that thing is all I can see. I'm not trying to dwell on the fear. I'm trying to accept what I saw and what had happened, but it's hard. I'm really glad that I can express how I feel. And I have read so much, and it's great to know that I'm not alone. Hey guys, it's Jeff. These stories are a couple days late. I wanted to put it out during the wolf moon, which we had. I was reading a little bit about that, and because it's in January and the wolves get hungry, they howl at the moon. So says the old timers. I just thought it was a cool name for the moon, especially with the Dogman stories and all of this. So I wanted to put this out, but I haven't been really feeling good lately. It's probably why my reading was a little off tonight too. But I wanted to get these stories out for you guys. I want to thank everybody who has been supportive of me, and I'm starting to feel a little bit better. For those who don't know, I have a terminal illness, and I have severe neuropathy in my legs and feet, which is taking its toll on me as I go. So anyway, let's not dwell on that. But thanks guys, and I hope you guys enjoy it. Have a great night.